And it's a sea monster mirror. Which without deck lists, I can't like speak to anyone being advantaged or not advantaged based on what's on the deck list. I have a general idea of how you want these to play out. I mean, Dreg Dredgers is your best turn one. Just accelerating your deep plan before your opponent can do so is really good. And I like not throwing the Vile Feast onto this to preserve life total. I don't think life total makes a whole lot of a difference in this matchup, especially incremental things like 2-on-1. Excuse me, especially when Vile Feast can get value onto Jaw Hunters. Like, I think that's pretty much like, you're trying to save your Vile Feast to line up onto Jaw Hunter specifically. Because your opponent didn't play anything this turn, I think that's why you're going for the Vile Feast. It is a little bit greedy, as your opponent does have Vile Feast and Withering Wail mana. God, this is destroying his stream quality. So yeah, this is like an aggressive play to try to push through the damage with the Jaw Hunters. I don't think this ever really works out. Yeah, so like that was a pretty greedy Vile Feast there. Granted, like you don't want to attack that with your Jaw Hunters, so it's kind of like, you know, what are you going to do? It's possible that you should have gone for the Vile Feast previously if that is the play that you wanted to make. Just save yourself the damage. Arachnoid Horror in this deck is definitely a little weird to me. It's not something that I'm used to seeing. It does fight for the board very well against burn and things of that nature, so I don't hate it, as well as just being a nice aggressive option. I don't think pushing the early damage is really what you're using it for. It is more so just the most aggressively statted 2-drop in your regional composition, I think is one of the reasons to run it. Just makes for like a good burn. And there's only one of it in the deck, as we do see there are 0 left, because there's 1 in hand. The really slow start from Maverick and the lack of capitalization on it from Nolagold is pretty bad for him. Randomly creating an Abyssal Eye is really valuable, though. I think this is like one of, if not the best sea monsters to get in the mirror on curve. And with 8 mana, Maverick only has the option to remove 1 and has neither. So Maverick bricked hard. This is full of bricks. Maverick could build a house with his hand with how many bricks are in it. And Nolagold's just knocking. I think anytime you can get the Abyssal Eye off, like, it feels really good. If I remember correctly, Maverick's running like, I think they said it was I think it's 1 Twisted Fate, 2 Maokai, and 3 Nautilus, whereas on the side of Nolagold, we do see 3 Maokai and 3 Nautilus. Or sorry, 2 Maokai, 2 Maokai, 3 Nautilus, and a Thresh. Thresh is a card that I kind of like in this deck. I think Thresh is just a really valuable 5-drop unit in general. I've been a big fan of the card since forever, pretty much. I just think that of all the units that you include in your deck because they're a valuable stat line for what they do, things like we see Fiora in every Bannerman deck because a 3/3 for 3 with Challengers is a very useful unit. And if it kills 2 1/1s, it turns into a 4/4. That's really good. Thresh is sort of the same vein. It doesn't take over a game, but it is just a very value unit. But yeah, so far, no plays have really like stood out as anything super flashy. The Jaw Hunters into the Vile Feast was a little bit greedy, but you also don't want to be trading Jaw Hunters for Dredgers, so like I'm definitely not mad at the play. I'm mad at these emotes exploding all over the screen and ruining the quality of the gameplay, but I mean, that is what it is. When you're a streamer, you gotta do that, right? You gotta make shit look cool. I don't know how to do that. I'm focused more on YouTube right now than streaming, so that's why I don't have cool shit like that. Yeah, I like the open attacks. Just as many hits as I can get in with this Abyssal Eye before my opponent responds to it or gets down their own Abyssal Eye, I think is pretty valuable. And if we don't go for an open attack, something like if we play, I don't even know what we would play here. It would probably have to be like Devour Sea Monster onto the Maokai. Then there's a chance for a Devour Sea Monster to come down onto my Abyssal Eye or, you know, an Abyssal Eye of his own to block it out. But Nautilus is pretty intimidating. I don't think there's anything you can do about that. Yeah, I think obliterating the Maokai is like 100% the right play, especially because you have so many Devour Sea Monsters in your hand, or Devourer of the Depths in your hand. I think just firing one off onto the Maokai is fine. What's up, Olin? My cat's just staring at the ceiling. And there are noises coming from up there, so I don't blame him. Okay, it's nothing. I don't know how far Maverick is off deep. I'm pretty sure he's extremely close. Generally by like turn 6 with like 2 or 3 toss of like with 2 or 3 like I think 2 jettison on 6, like you're there. I would assume this jettison's gonna get him there. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I do like just jamming the Nautilus on 7 there from Maverick. There's no punish that your opponent can have. This is just such a difficult unit to deal with. Like, they could have had the Vengeance, but that's going to happen no matter what, and it would have been the entire turn. And if Vengeance comes out, then that's their entire turn, then your Maokai gets to live. And now you get immediate value because you got to untap with it, went deep immediately, and now have the reduced cost sea monsters. Nolagold's got a pretty good path to victory with Maokai now because Nautilus has already come out. The refuel of the deck is out of the way. There's a general, like, Nolagold's not really in any danger here. If Maverick's Maokai does go off, then Nolagold can respond with Nautilus and it'll refuel his deck with every tossed sea monster. And that option is no longer on the table for Maverick. From a board perspective, though, Nolagold is behind, but he has the blockers, so, like, it's not really that bad. With this Maokai being so close, yeah, the Maokai is actually going to evolve here, which honestly kind of makes me want to block with that instead of Devourer of the Depths. But actually, no, this is going to go up to a 7/7, so I do like this. I do like this. I forgot that these boys were going to go deep. Yeah, Double Jettison is like, it's one of those things where like you really never want to play around it, but you will just get blown out by it. It's so impossible to play around, though. And since I believe Maverick is only running 2 Maokai, I do think we will get to see, like, it's possible that Nolagold, like, hard goes for a Maokai kill this turn. I think starting off with the Devourer of the Depths onto the Maokai is pretty fine. It does, like, he's not pressured to, though, because he has the Nautilus for the refuel. This isn't that crazy to me since you do have Atrocity. It's not the play I would have gone for. Especially, like, if your opponent, because Maokai's at 23 out of 25, if your opponent plays a unit the Maokai upgrades, and now you've wasted your Nautilus sort of ETB. Wait, his Nautilus didn't upgrade? I just realized that his Nautilus didn't upgrade from the Jettison. I thought it was sitting at 20 out of 25. Huh. I mean, obviously I'm wrong, but he's at 22 now. Okay, so is it? God, is it like 14? No, it was at 12 even. Well, yeah, I guess that's really low. I mean, it makes sense based on the way the game's been going. It's reasonable for it to have been that low, but yeah, and this is what I was talking about. Like, we see the immediate kill onto the Nautilus before it can actually get any value. I think I would have preferred to just kill my opponent's Maokai with the Devourer of the Depths. Yeah, this doesn't proc Maokai, so you don't have to fire off something like the Grasp in response. But now we see Nolagold's Maokai upgrade. But he's got the Atrocity. I don't think there's anything that stops this. Some life gain out of Maverick will do it, actually. If we see anything like, and because he has so many fearsome attackers, like, just any amount of life gain stops this. Yeah, I don't think there's, I mean, you can attack with the Maokai. There's not a lot of reason to, but you can. Like, these are all fearsome, so you're just giving yourself an extra. Yeah, no, there's really no reason to block with this because, like, it just gets blocked by my Maokai. Because my Maokai can't block. I have 2 units that can't block any of these, so, like, I might as well, right? I mean, you might as well just like not attack with this. It really doesn't matter in this scenario, but let's see if Maverick has any amount of life gain. He does. So yeah, that's lethal then. That's kind of what I was talking about, where like it is sketchy. Nolagold potentially had lethal, which is why he went for the Nautilus, but once the plate worm egg comes down, that's like just super backbreaking. That card's so like, it's really interesting to see people starting to add Shipwreck Hoarder back into their decks because the treasures are extremely valuable. Terror of the Tides is a card that I know BBG has said he's not like super sold on. I'm not in love with it either, but I don't play a lot of sea monsters. Okay. We missed a little something. Yeah, we missed a lot actually. Oh, we didn't miss anything. Okay. So it was just turn 1 Dredgers into Remembrance on turn 3. So like nothing actually happened in the first couple turns. So we're chill to come in here. I think Jaw Hunters is much more reasonable than Salvage, pushing 4 damage onto this, letting you finish it off with a Vile Feast. Maverick, unfortunately getting the worst possible Remembrance hit, because nothing has died this turn. It's such a fine line. Like, this card is either the worst or the best. There's no in between. Because the 4/5 Scout would have been kind of dope. As previously mentioned, I don't have the deck lists, if I remember correctly. What is this? I don't remember what this is, because, like, you would think Maverick would be running the Shadow Isle Fiora deck that he's been on. I think he said he hit rank 1 Master in EU with that deck specifically. And he was saying he thought it was a great tournament deck, but we don't see him whipping it out here. That's right, this is like Poro Plunder. This deck I do not understand at all, really. I mean, like, I understand it. I'm not sold on it. That's for sure. I mean, it got him to top 8, but I think that there is a pretty large gap in player skill that could have played into that. But we'll have to see. I'm pretty sure the general idea is like your Lonely Poro gives you 2 1-attack units, which basically is probably one of the best ways to guarantee plunder in Freljord, and then you can go for some of the more Sejuani package style things. Elixir of Iron still just like one of the best cards in the game. That could be a reason why we see people going back to Freljord, is like anytime damage-based removal takes over a format, Freljord comes out to sort of smack it down with Elixir of Iron. And honestly, I do think that is a partial reason of why we're seeing so much Freljord resurgence. So we set this up for the Vile Feast. I think the Maokai comes down here instead, though. Single combat could kill the Maokai, but it would also take this out, so... The awkward part is you don't have a great follow-up for the Maokai turn. Like, you could go for Devourer onto this, and then summon your 2/1. If it doesn't work out, it's a little awkward. I think there's a pretty high chance that it works out, though. So I do like the Maokai into the, like, Devour onto this, or Devour onto this, either one. Devouring onto this is a little bit safer, because it doesn't get blown up by a single Elixir of Iron, and then you just throw the Sapling at this. There's that one Arachnoid Horror coming in again. I still think Devourer is better. It just cleans up the board so cleanly. Obviously, you get a lot more versatility out of the turn if you go for Arachnoid. And you do still have the Vile Feast to take out the Radiant Guardian. I think the consideration here is that you really don't want to be using these on 1/1s. It's not bad value, but like if you can use it to kill the 5/1, then I guess that's something that you want to go for instead. Save the Devourer of the Depths, especially since you do have Jettison in hand. Like, you got a fair amount of toss going on. Since you got the Maokai on board, since you got the Jettison in hand, maybe you just save this for a higher impact target. It's one of those things where, like, it's a very good mid-game value play to go for this, but it does leave you vulnerable for the turn, so Nolagold's going for the safer play of leaving himself with all of his spells available instead of going for, like, the heavy tempo swing. And you do have to balance out like tempo versus like how much value you're actually getting out of your cards. Like this would be a pretty low value Devourer onto something that's so damaging, clean it up with a Vile Feast. But the tempo swing is incredible. But since you know your opponent already, like your opponent still has a Poro in hand that they haven't played. This is a little strange to me, that we haven't even like attacked with our sapling yet at least. We just fired off the jettison. I think this is really awkward from Nolagold. He's threatening a Maokai level relatively soon. Oh, that's right. Okay. So I forgot that when you play a burst spell and pass and your opponent passes back, you do get a priority sequence again. I thought it would just end the turn. So that makes a little bit more sense. I think never going for the attack is a little weird, though. I think skipping the block here is also weird. Like, I don't know why we're not firing off a Vile Feast onto this Radiant Guardian. It's possible that we're trying to stop them from getting down a Radiant Guardian that is tough and has lifesteal. But at this point, I don't think it's actually that impactful. Granted, your life total is not in danger either. So, you know, maybe you do hold back this Vile Feast. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, I don't have access to Maverick's deck list. I don't know how much plunder is in here. If there is as much plunder as I think there is, then you probably do want to throw your Maokai out in front of this and go for a block here. Or a Vile Feast here. I'm just not sure why we've let this Radiant Guardian live this long. Shipwreck Hoarder is kind of cool. Doesn't actually get you any closer to deep. Of course, Maokai does. And Maokai's going to get us there straight away with the first mill. We should have... I think we have 14 in deck. It showed 12, but I don't think it had calculated putting the treasures in just yet. Yeah, so the Radiant Guardian does come down, which is, I mean, like, it's possible that that's what we've been playing around this entire time, but because the Laurent Protégé had already died this turn, I'm not sure why we haven't Vile Feasted this other Radiant Guardian yet. You don't have anything to stop this, but you do have the second Maokai, so I think it is reasonable to just wait until your Maokai is leveled before you play the second Maokai, especially because it is your last one, and there doesn't seem to be a lot that I can think of for Maverick to end this game or get back into it through a Maokai level. Yeah, with Maokai at 21 out of 25, 22 out of 25 once the sapling dies. Yeah, like now Devourer gets to come down onto this guy. There's no Lore of the Depths in Nolagold's deck. Also something worth mentioning. That's a card that Sea Monster players still seem really torn on. I think the best play for this turn is to just throw the Devourer monster onto this to get things started off. I don't hate the open attack. You're not really concerned with your opponent. Like, your opponent is at 20. So if you don't have to use a Devour Sea Monster onto this, and it just dies for free on the trade, then, like, that's chill too. So there are 2 Poros in Maverick's hand. And this makes the rest of the turn kind of awkward for Nolagold. I think developing Nautilus is the most likely. I think Maokai is sketchy at best. But I also don't know how much removal is in Maverick's deck. I assume not a lot, since it is Demacia and Freljord. You know, the only thing you really have to worry about is, like, Detain, I guess. There's nothing single combat that's going to threaten this Maokai this turn anyway. At least that is on board. But I do think Nautilus is, like, the best play. You can just kind of sit here and slow roll the Maokai. You're now set up for some good Devourers on your opponent's turn. There's another Radiant Guardian coming down, yeah. So, like, Radiant Guardian into another single combat would have blown this Maokai out of the water. There's the third Poro, so half of Maverick's hand just doesn't exist. Maverick's playing with a 3-card hand. And, like, it's a good wall tactic, but wall doesn't beat Sea Monsters because the Fearsomes start coming out. We see Terror of the Tides in the list. Or, sorry, Terror of the Tides isn't in Nolagold's list. I think it was randomly generated last game. But I do like... Yeah, so I like Dread Dredgers over Devour Sea Monster. You don't care, as I said, your opponents are still at 20, so you don't really care about that. You just play the thing that tosses and then play your Maokai. And if you do want to care about the life total later on, you do have the Plateworm Eggs, which will go right over these little Poros. And Maokai does also leave you with double Devour. Because your opponent's not playing Shadow Isle, you don't have to worry about Ruination. You can continue to overextend the board like this. Yeah, Maokai's going to come down. Exactly 25 out of 25. Put Maverick on a 4-turn clock that I do not think Maverick's going to be able to get through, thanks to not only just the massive board that Nolagold currently has, but the Plateworm Egg as well. Yeah, we see the elusive port. Like, that's nothing. I think you even just throw a Devour Sea Monster down here onto this Radiant Guardian. If you're holding them back, it's because you think that your opponent could play something a little more threatening than that. Which is understandable. Like, you do still have the blocks to take care of something like this. That was terrible. Elusive Lifesteal. I don't think there's... I mean, it's not impossible that there's Fluff of Poros coming out. If we're getting rid of this, then I think there is Fluff of Poros in Maverick's deck. Otherwise, I don't think we care about an elusive Lifesteal 1-drop. But you wouldn't be able to devour the Fluff of Poros that has that on it. It'd be an 8/8 with elusive and Lifesteal, which is infinitely more intimidating. So I guess that's what we've been hanging on to these Devour of the Depths for. Which makes a little bit more sense. As I said, I don't have Maverick's deck list, so I wasn't sure if he was running the Fluff of Poros. Seems like a pretty value unit, but also... I think you're good to swing out with everything here because the Radiant Guardian has to walk the Nautilus. You get to clean up the rest of the Poros, which just makes the fluff a little bit smaller. I think you're even fine to attack with the Maokai. Of course, you don't have to. There's no real reason to. You just kind of want to clear up your own board state at this point. Ooh, Unyielding Spirit. That's not going to get it done, though. You do, like, there are so many cards coming out of Nolagold. The Devour Sea Monster now almost certainly comes down onto this. As well as just your opponent is on a 2-turn clock because they have, I think, 2 cards left in deck at this point. You know, an Undying 5/5 Lifesteal isn't going to save them. You don't even have to play this Devour here. You could just pass. And that's kind of like why I haven't hated like the Devourers not coming down as proactively as I would have liked them to. It's just like you don't have to. It's just a play that I would make to kind of accelerate the pace of the game. Okay, yeah, sorry, there were 3 cards left in the deck. Now there's 2 cards left in the deck. But there's nothing, there's no like evasion on the side of this thing. I don't know why this got bigger all of a sudden. Alright, so that's Nolagold pulling it back, forcing out game 3. Nope. First few turns of burn are pivotal. Would like to see those in action. Okay, so it was just Precious Pet, open attack, boom crew. Ice Veil onto the boom crew doesn't matter, just developing the unit. Oh, no, there is an attack token coming out, so... just gonna trade onto the Precious Pet, yeah. I think trading onto the Precious Pet is a lot better than pushing 1 damage onto... or pushing 3 damage onto the boom crew, since I don't think there's any 1 damage spells coming out of this deck. On turn 3, your opponent has access to, at minimum, Fiora. So, I think the open attack is actually pretty reasonable, since you don't have any spell mana banked. But I'm not gonna lie, I actually do like playing Legion Saboteur here and attacking. I don't think you play Demolitionist, but I do think you get to play Saboteur, and even if your opponent plays Fiora, you just attack into it. Yeah, pretty sure you attack with both these units. I'm not sure why we're holding back the Legion Saboteur. I don't know why we were going to play it if we were afraid of Fiora. Like, that seems like... Huh. Okay. So I'm pretty sure Maverick's going for an Unyielding Spirit win here. That's the only reason I could think to ever not block with this Fiora is you don't want to put it in danger of something like a Mystic Shot. So Nolagold's going to feel pretty pressured to remove this next turn. Because on turn 5, the Unyielding Spirit does come down as long as 3 spell mana is banked. I think it'd be really weird for Maverick to attack with this after not blocking the Boom Crew. I thought I had a read on Maverick's hand, and now like, if Maverick attacks, I have absolutely no idea what his hand is. I could have sworn that Unyielding Spirit is what we're setting up for by not blocking the Boom Crew rookie and pushing the damage onto it and then challenging it out again this turn. Okay. This takes away the Unyielding Spirit on 5, but it also explains the lack of block since we only had 1 mana. Yeah, there's nothing Nolagold can do about this. He could go double Get Excited onto this. It's more likely that it'd be Noxian Fervor Get Excited. But you probably have to discard the other Get Excited at that point because I can't imagine you using or like getting rid of Demolitionist Curator. But if your opponent then has, you know, something as simple as an Elixir of Iron, then you get blown out. But I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption that your opponent doesn't, since they didn't go for the block onto this last turn. Like I think if Maverick had Elixir of Iron, he would have blocked the Boom Crew. But yeah, I don't think you can afford to like get rid of all of your resources to push past this Fiora. Especially when you do have Curator Demolitionist in hand. Like, I think you just try to go wide around this. I do think you play Demolitionist here. Huh. Playing very... I'm really not sure what the reasoning was for not playing it there. I understand that you want to go into 3 spell mana. But... So, like, this gives you 8 mana. Like, you wasted a mana. So, this turn you'd have 7 mana. And you only have 6 mana worth of spells to play anyway. So this shouldn't have made like too much of a difference. Because this would already be on board. And then we'd have 5 and 3. So because we're starting off the turn with the Demolitionist, we're actually playing like extremely inefficiently both on tempo and mana. I guess we wanted to be able to react to the single combat. That's really the only thing I can think of. Is like very specifically we wanted to react to single combat. It looks like it will work out for him here. But this still doesn't feel great. You do now have an opportunity to kill the Fiora, which I guess is good enough. So yeah, I mean that was just a great read by Nolagold. Because otherwise he would have been stuck on 2 mana, he wouldn't have been able to react to the single combat. Now tapped out, we have the Get Excited and to Get Excited onto this, and then we have this for the refuel. So yeah, Nolagold actually played that one extremely well. Props to him. And now we get the Disciple back because it was detained. Get Excited is a pretty bad top deck, but it is what it is. Yeah, you just wait for this to... You don't have to play this pre-combat because your opponent has to attack this thing. Now we get down Insightful. I actually really like the Insightful Investigator in this burn deck. I think it's like actually kind of an insane tech that I'm pretty sure we'll see a lot more of going forward. Just because this is like 2-drop dot deck, and we're gonna see, yeah, we're gonna see him kind of pop off a little bit here with it. I think it's fine to play this as well instead of holding it in hand for the Get Excited, since they represent the same amount of damage. I don't think you're ever going for a proactive Get Excited onto this to push through 2, 3, 8, 11? 11 damage? Yeah, if you kill this and your opponent doesn't do anything, because we would have discarded this to blow this up, we would push through 11 damage, which is puts them at 1. But he does play Radiant Guardians, so it's not guaranteed that we just win with the Boom Crew. So yeah, I don't think it's ever like a consideration to... It's definitely never a consideration to try and like push past this, but I do think it is good to play this instead of holding it for this. So now the awkward part is you swing out, your opponent blocks, and then you get Radiant Guardianed on. But if your opponent blocks your highest attack unit, so let's say this one, it's the most impactful, then you are pushing 2, 5, 8, 11 damage, and the Get Excited does just kill your opponent on the next turn. You lose to single combat, or you don't even lose to single combat in conjunction with the Radiant Guardian. It just sets you behind. It does suck that you don't have a card in hand to play with your Get Excited this turn to actually go for lethal, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. And this is going to set your opponent at 1, I believe. So it does have to be like Radiant Guardian into like single combat or even double single combat. And since your opponent's already played a single combat, you know, it's a little... And like, just because that's the worst case doesn't mean your opponent even has it. That's something that I feel like players get choked up on a lot, is like they consistently sit here and like worry about worst case that they never play the cards. It's something that we saw Presto do earlier by like never jamming down the Fiora. He was just like so scared of worst case for the entire game that he just like didn't play the game. Yeah, like I said, Radiant Guardian's like kind of expected, but you do still like it has to also have a single combat, otherwise this Get Excited just ends the game. If you block with this thing, your opponent goes to 4. You can play this, which will draw you another card. You got options. I don't think you have to go for this here since you do have the Investigator. And Maverick would hold back a single combat for a response to a burn spell. Yeah, Noxian Fervor is even safer to go for than Get Excited, so that's a pretty good pickup. It's just like a little bit safer way to end the game. I do think Nolagold, like, borderline can't lose. With a lifesteal unit on your opponent's board, I'm hard pressed to say like, oh yeah, you know, you can always come back, or there's no way you lose, because like you can lose, but it seemed pretty unlikely here. Having the third Get Excited instead of any other burn spell is a little unfortunate, but I don't think it's actually going to play against him that much.